Hello, my name's Nathan Dewberry, and I'm director of The Redeemed. I'd like to welcome you to another episode of the Redeemed Man podcast, and I'd like to give you an update about small groups. So, last fall, we launched our first small group semester, and this year we have 8 groups this fall that just launched second week of September. There are 8 different groups of guys that are connecting from across our country in our online community. We even have 2 guys outside the U.S., one from Brazil and one from Canada. And as I think about these groups and what's happening, men are stepping into authentic relationship with other guys. They're finding that supportive community that we talk all about providing, and guys are taking off the mask, being real and honest, finding liberty and connection, and I'm so excited. I think about one particular story. So a guy came to our Restored event, and he wanted to come and hear Tebow. He wasn't sure about a Christian event. He definitely wasn't sure about a big crowd. And so that night with 550 guys, he sat next to 2 gentlemen who had been in one of our online groups who had also driven in from out of town. And they connected that night. God got a hold of his heart, and he's plugged in now to one of our online groups. And I'm just so thrilled to see how God is at work and moving in the lives of men all across our community and all across the world. So if you haven't plugged into a group yet, let me encourage you. We'll have new groups starting before you know it. And our goal really is to consistently launch new groups so that men can plug into a group no matter what season of life you're in, so that you can connect with other guys, step out of isolation, be honest and real, find accountability and encouragement through small groups. So that's an update. Can't wait to hear and tell you more stories in the future. Today, I could not be more excited to have one of my excellent friends on the podcast today, Mark Pettus. He's on the senior leadership team at Church of the Highlands, president of Highlands College, married to his wonderful wife, Jill. They have 4 sons, avid runner, loves adventure and travel, also loves to learn. I think that's one of our biggest connections over the years, of just always being able to talk about what we're reading and what is happening in our life that God's teaching us. So, and it's honestly probably the friend that I've had for the longest. We've known each other since kindergarten, but my dad was a teacher and educator in the same high school as his parents, and so we have journeyed through a lot of different things. There's some crazy stories that we both could tell on each other. we might get into some of that. But Mark, welcome to the show. It's an honor to have you on today.
I'm so honored to be here, and never honestly been more excited to be with someone in an environment like this, because I love you, admire you, and I know you just read through my resume, and obviously all glory to God for anything that I've ever done, as you well know from knowing me for a long time. But I just actually don't need to introduce you, obviously, on your own podcast. But I have to say, Nathan Dewberry, you being my friend, has made a massive impact in my life. And I don't know who all might be watching or listening today, but this is a man of God who I would not be on this podcast without. So his example from a young age is he pursued Christ. Even when I didn't and went outside the lines, he was always a very centering force for me and someone I knew I could depend on. And then when I gave my life to Jesus, in many ways was a friend and a mentor, and we had a whole lot of fun. And then even did my wedding, was the pastor at my wedding. So anyway, Nate, I love you, appreciate you, couldn't be more honored, and just glad we are connected in this season. It's such an amazing story.
No, it's awesome. God is so good, and it's one of the things that we don't get to hang out a lot. But when we do, it's always just like it was when we were in high school. We have changed and we have grown up.
We have mortgages and kids. Other than that, it's the same.
Same friendship. And so I'm super thankful for that, and just honor you for your faithfulness and just for your humility. That's one of the things that just, I think, it permeates the culture of Highlands, and you have modeled that. I think that's why you've been such a great fit for the team there, of just humility through and through. It's not about your name. It's not about your platform. It's about the kingdom and things that are greater. And just fun to be a part, fun to watch that. It's great to be a part of Highlands now, with my wife serving on the team there, and our home church, and Mark's family's there, my family's there. It's like, it's crazy. Just when we think about it, and just the impacts and how all of us kind of have common things that we can talk about now, from sermons on Sundays to what God's doing in our local campuses. So it's really cool to be a part of that. And I would love just to start out by asking, kind of, what is your greatest joy, or what has been one of your greatest joys in serving at Church of the Highlands and leading at Highlands College? Because I know there's so many different things that you can think about that just excite you. But what, if you look back over the years, what's been one of the greatest things that you just like, it thrills your soul to think about?
Yeah, I think for me personally, when I was in college, so I found Highlands in college. So I played football here in Birmingham at UAB, and we actually heard Pastor Chris speak one night at FCA. So we had a Fellowship of Christian Athletes event each week, had different guest speakers throughout the year. And I remember actually coming in that night with my girlfriend, who's now my wife, Jill, and didn't really have a bigger expectation. It was another guest speaker we knew nothing about, other than he had just planted a church. I think it was 3 or 4 weeks earlier. And so I already was a believer and was pursuing Christ. But I kind of always felt like I was hitting a lid in my relationship with Jesus and didn't really understand why that might be. And Pastor Chris that night spoke and told the story of Highlands and invited us all to come. We followed that up with coming to the church the next week. So we've really been here since 2001. So literally, I have a CD, a cassette, and a CD from that first Sunday that I came. They used to produce those, and so what it did for me instantly was that ceiling felt like it lifted. In worship, I was able to connect with God. There was such a practical aspect of Pastor Chris's teaching, but the key, and I pray this continues to always be the key for us at Highlands, is that there was a way for me to get out of the pew or out of the seat into active ministry. That they created a pathway. Highlands created a pathway for me through what we now call the growth track. Back then, it didn't even have a name. But the fact that I could be a leader, as messed up and as far as I still had to go in my walk with Christ, but the fact that a church came alongside me and said there's a purpose in your life and we will give you opportunity, changed everything. And so I think that being able to serve in that aspect, hopefully through our team here at Highlands College with our students and continually through the church, to create that opportunity for other people is still the joy of my life, because it truly changed my life.
Yeah. Don't you think too, we also had that opportunity even from high school in a way that changed our perspective? And so getting to Highlands, you were like, oh, this reminds me of being able to serve. Because I think when I
Yeah.
look back to high school, I think about the opportunities we had to lead, that a lot of students would just attend youth group, and we got to be involved and lead
Yeah.
students.
Well, I think back in high school, you were probably the leader and I was more of like the trouble, but I
I don't
was,
I don't know
so,
about that. You were
so,
the
so,
leader. It's just there was some fun
so
in there too.
yeah, it was still, hopefully there's still fun, but it's mature. But no, I think, no, you and I think about this a lot. And I don't know about you, but I pray for this for my kids, because we had such an amazing,
Yeah.
didn't realize at the time, unique experience with a youth pastor that did create space. And I do think that losing that in those early college years, finding it again at Highlands was massive. But Bill, who only needs one name, it's just Bill, for our whole friend group.
Yeah.
Bill did create that. And I'll never forget, Bill invited me to preach or speak one night at youth group, and I was barely saved. Funniest story ever. I didn't know what to preach on, and I had just watched a horrible movie on the 7 deadly sins. I think Brad Pitt was in it. I can't remember the name of it. I don't want to promote that. And I did a 10-minute message at 17 years old on the 7 deadly sins. So obviously that was, pretty much heresy. But I will say that something about that opportunity definitely resonated, and I think you're right. I think it continued to be something that was very attractive, and I do pray for that for my own kids. They'll have
Yeah.
opportunity and leaders that believe in them.
Yeah. That's one of the things I think, even watching my kids now involved with our church, of seeing opportunities for them to lead, which is huge, because it really personalizes their faith.
Yeah.
Thinking back to high school a little bit longer, growing up, what are some of those things that in your formative years that you look back on that really define your leadership today? I mean, we're going to spend some time really focused in on leadership. And
Yeah.
obviously, I know your family, I know some of the things that happen in your life, but our audience doesn't. And I'd love for them to just know a little bit more about some of the things that formed who you are, because I know the character you have. Yeah, there were those years of being a little sowing some wild oats, but
Yeah.
I knew who you were through and through, and
Yeah.
that's because of a lot of the people in your life.
Yeah. I'm very blessed to have incredible grandparents and parents. My dad is my hero. I was with him last night. I spoke over in Mississippi, and he went with me, which is so much fun. Yeah, I think for me growing up, and I think you would agree with this, Clay County was and is a very small place, but a very special place. And you can have fun with it because it's such a small town. But I'm so grateful that I grew up there and we're surrounded with healthy, especially in my case, male role model. And I'm very blessed for that. I know others, that's not their story, but one of the things I think early on that I wouldn't have recognized as important to leadership, but I actually feel like I try at least to build this into all of my leadership, is the power of shared experience
Yeah.
and the relational aspect of leadership that I think sometimes we can know all the lessons of leadership, but miss out on. And I think small towns are great havens for shared experience because, you kind of do everything. We graduated with less than 50 people, however many it was, but so there was this aspect to it of we go through these things, whether good or bad, together. And through that, there's a bond that's created. My family did that through traveling. We went on these RV vacations, and it formed a deep bond with my siblings. We did that, through a youth group. And I think the small town presented moments like football games that felt like we were all together. Yeah. And I do believe that that probably has marked my leadership at the core level. I try to make that the vehicle that all of my leadership lives inside of, and to kind of have the locker room moment with everybody as we lead through whether it be a conference or an event, that never forget that the atmosphere we create around it is as important as the event we lead or the team we build.
No, I could not agree more with that. I think even of my wife and having gone to West Point and how close their classes are, but it's because they have that shared experience of oftentimes suffering together.
Yeah, usually it is actually.
But it really is creating that community where no matter where they are in the globe, they're like, we're a West Pointer. And it just immediately they connect, they bond over that. Yeah. So I couldn't agree more about Clay County and growing up. I mean, gosh, we had 10,000 people at a football game. There's only 13,000 people in the whole county. So.
And we didn't know any different, but it was special. And I do know I have seen other things now, and it's rare, and it had its limitations, but I actually think all of those created strengths. I think that those that made us go dig a little deeper into some areas. So I think, in general, that's a huge aspect of it. And I think just consistency too. I think about my grandfather often in leadership, and just how he, as many in that generation did, served in the military and did through different experiences and just didn't quit when it got hard. And that's kind of my mantra, honestly, my personal mantra for my family and in my life is, if we don't quit, we win.
Yeah.
And I think the person who just digs in and says, I'm not, it's not fun right now. It's not going like it should. And some of that's my fault, whatever it might be, but I'm just not going to quit. And I think there's a spirit of that where we grew up, and definitely in your family, you come from an amazing family. And I think it was also mine. Very, very blessed for that.
Yeah. No, we're really a product of generations before us for the things that our families chose, character decisions that they made, the integrity that they had, the choices they made. We're definitely products of that, and hopefully continue that along with our kids in the next generation. When I think about where you are today, and think about, we were just talking about earlier, classmates, and kind of that whole journey of looking back and seeing what God's done. Was there ever a time in your life where you kind of had a vision of where God was going to take you and lead you to? I mean, or is it one of those things you like pinch yourself and go, how am I really going to do that?
Yeah, I definitely pinch myself and don't feel at all like I'm the most qualified. I think available, yes, faithful, yes, and thankfully that God qualifies us and equips us. But I definitely, by nature, I'm a very strategic thinker. I like to at least try to be a strategic thinker, but I definitely didn't see this coming in any shape or form. I think what attracted me at Highlands, again, the opportunity to serve, turned into just such a passion for ministry, specifically youth ministry. And I think this is probably true for a lot of leaders. And I want to encourage anybody that may be watching this, that I think there are moments and there are people that God does give the master plan to. I was not one of those, but I do know this, is that he was faithful to open doors. Every door was a test of faith. Every door, and continues to be, a growth opportunity. Every door was an invite. It was never forced. God never does that. He allows us he's faithful to allow us to be led, not to force us, to follow. So I think every door open. I will say, I serve under such a great leader. What Pastor Chris does is he makes vision so clear, and vision for us is the touchdown. It's permission to play. And then on the other side, so there is no budge, not even an inch in vision, which I think is important for any organization. We know who we are and we know why we're on earth. But then inside of that, he creates massive space. It's almost like a field that has a fence. The fence is the vision, but inside of that, he's the most empowering leader I've ever met. And so for me, a lot of the things I'm doing today, I had the opportunity to serve underneath a leader that made vision clear but then also allowed these things to flow out of mine and many, many hundreds of others' hearts around here. And so it's been a journey of each door walking through, trusting God, and then also, ideating and creating inside of that, and which is a whole lot of fun. So it's been a journey, but definitely never saw it coming.
And what year was it you came on the team at Highlands?
Came on the team in '06. I got married in 2005, and then we were serving as volunteers. We call the dream team, and then came on staff a year later as the. It was so funny because I came on staff as the high school pastor, which was definitely as you know,
Yeah.
you were in that season, the youth pastor. We both had that passion, and I still love students. And then like 3 days later, they like tricked me because they were like, "Hey, you're the high school pastor," and I really had no passion for middle school. And they're like, "But you're." 3 days later, they're like, "You're also going to do the middle school thing," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Yeah. So anyway, so I don't know if I would have said yes no matter what. But so I led both of those starting in '06, and then in 2011 for me had the chance to step into the college role as well as that, and then join the church executive team, and then my role here at the college has grown to where that's my full time focus for sure.
And when you started that year, about how many students were involved?
In the college or in the student ministry?
Student ministry.
Oh man, we had a fateful 35 to 70. It fluctuated based on what else was happening around us that was more fun or attractive. But they were amazing. I'm still actually some of them are on my team here at the church or at the college. But yeah, we had a crew that just refused. They were dug in. They weren't going anywhere, and we built from there, which was a whole lot of fun. Just to start small and let's see God multiply. Really not through my leadership. What I credit the students. The students themselves became the evangelists.
Yeah,
and they built Motion into what it is today.
And speaking of the Motion is what Highlands calls their student ministry, but then also Motion Conference. This last year, how many kids were at Motion Conference?
So we had 13,000 in the room, which was amazing.
So you think about that, your perspective of where you guys started and where you are. And I think not only thinking about in as far as the student ministry, but then the college and accreditation and development, how have you continued to expand your capacity as a leader and your capabilities to grow and take your leadership to that next level as an organization continues to grow? Because you know as well as I know that's not easy work, and a lot of people fail at that, and then the organization struggles because the leader's struggling with the things that they have on their plate. Their own capacities just can't handle what they are taking on. So how have you managed to grow to keep up with the growth of the organization?
Yeah, I think you should ask that question to my team to make sure I am still keep it up. But anyway, so no, I think leadership number one has to be driven from passion. I want to, the grace to lead that God gives us. We have to always be attentive to that. And there's so many things I would not be graced to lead. There's so many other pursuits that I would have already hit a leadership lid in, and I'm not sure we're born. I mean, I think we're born with leadership inside of us, but I'm not sure. I actually am pretty confident that the best of the leadership inside of you and me is going to only flourish when we're pointed in the right direction, the purpose of God on our life. So I think there's a favor and a grace, and I think one of the markers of that, just one of them, there's others, but it's just a passion for it. So I think number one, just loving to grow and learn, and actually for me, learning over time to embrace failure. Not just, I know we're supposed to say that, but truly once you pass the emotion of failure, which always hits you, but once that wave comes over, to say, you know what, of course I don't know how to do what this is in front of me. I've never done it before, and I made a noble attempt, but I'm going to take all that I didn't succeed in, or any area that was possibly a failure inside of that, and use that as fuel. And that's where you have to have a passion for it, to take that and then just to use that to equip yourself. So I think really enjoying the journey of leadership. I love to learn, as you do. I love to read. I love to study, and I've actually come to actually love, not succeeding ever really completely, but hitting benchmarks, but not, and having further to go, and just digging in on that opportunity, seeing problems as opportunities, and making that a big part of the joy. And I think without a doubt, that the core of that has to be you as a leader, anyone listening that has that passion to learn and grow. And then you have to build a team around you, or no matter how much of that you do, you'll hit that lid. Yeah. And so God is faithful to do that. And I think as Christian leaders, we pray for that. I think even in the cultural secular space, there's nothing that can surpass the multiplication that comes from other leaders coming around you, and typically stepping into the spaces of your own weaknesses. And so I think our job as leaders is to have the confidence and security to allow that to happen, And there's definitely moments you may feel intimidated by that, but every time that I've done that and put someone around me that's better than me in an area, that we all have a deep honor and respect for the seat we all inhabit, but that recognizing I actually put
Yeah.
people around me that are better, that's the only way to grow through those areas. And then I think third thing I'd say, so passion to lead and just love it, make it your hobby. I personally don't even play golf. I love to lead. I mean, I just love
Yeah.
studying leadership, and I'm working on another degree right now in leadership. I just love to study. I think building a team, and then I think studying great models. I think if Pastor Chris has done anything really, really well is he's continued to be a student of his, in our case, church, or in my case, college, a student of others and having models, because those models give you vision and take the weight off of creating something yourself and say, you know what, we can learn best practices everywhere. So we
Yeah.
always are encouraged to have at least 3 models of others who are doing it better than us to study.
You mentioned surrounding yourself with people who kind of offset for your weaknesses. As you've grown as a leader, what are some of those things you've identified in your own life that you're like, that's not a strength of mine. I've got to surround myself with those kind of people.
Well, if my wife was here, she could give you a longer list, but no,
Well,
I have some.
it used to be ironing because you used to solicit
Uh,
me to iron your clothes. So I don't know if
and I
you've
still,
hired
bro,
somebody
if
or
it's up to me, I mean, I do any kind of like, sport coat or suit, I'm getting that thing dry cleaned. And if it's up to me, I'm gonna throw it in the dryer and hope it comes out, iron. So anyway, um, but yeah, I think for me, for sure, I'm an ideations in my strength, top 5 strengths. So I have a lot of ideas. Activating those ideas is something that I have to have always someone by my side who can flow in that idea. And I think there's some I was going to say magic, but defined flow, not trying to mystify it, but just
yeah,
that chemistry of someone who's like, man,
yeah,
I'm with you and rolling. And one of the guys on my team named Jordan, who's my chief of staff, he's that guy. Like he's in the room, and as I'm dreaming or talking with the team, he's like, I'm the activator, and I'm going to capture it, I'm going to organize it, and he's going to come back, and then we're going to process. I never like releasing and letting go. I like to be a part of the process, but he's going to be the one that says, you know what, we're going to need check these boxes and organizing that. I think ideation to creation. I definitely love to have people at my table who are true creatives and who can think outside of the box that I might put an idea in. And I don't have that pure gift, although I very deeply appreciate it. And then I think for me, more and more in the world we live in today, communication is something that I need to have really smart people around me who can translate ideas and vision into internal communication for my organization so that they never feel like those ideas are leaving them behind. That
yeah.
creates massive waste of energy in organizations if communication is off. I think we all recognize that. And then more and more into the external communication. So that might be marketing or PR in the PR space, or in sales in some way, or in our case, recruiting.
Yeah.
And so communications is something that I like. So when I look around the room, I like to say, okay, if I'm the primary kind of vision driver, I'm responsible for organizational resources, but I've got everybody around me to take an idea to action and communication and creativity all in one space. So those are just a few examples. There's many others but I think what that does for a leader, what it does for all of us, right, is it takes the weight off of I don't want to be that authoritarian leader that
Yeah.
is ultimately the cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
I actually love leading inside the spoke, not on top of a pyramid. So let's lead together, stay connected, and let's enjoy our strengths and our weaknesses.
I think about that team approach and definitely know that about you even from the start, even in thinking back to high school and college. You were always about bringing along others. It was never just about you, as who could join in, who could be a part of it. And so I can definitely see you, the part of that success in your leadership of always looking for people that you can pull in, raise to the next level, empowered to do something. So I think it's a great fit having served under Pastor Chris and your gifting as well to be able to kind of take some of those same principles that he has and really already have had some of those sown into your life from early on. You definitely are going to influence people. When you think about your team and looking, I know Highlands has a process that's probably clearly defined in hiring, but what are the things that you look for when you're trying to find somebody to surround you? What are the things in leadership that you're like, oh, this is a no-brainer for me that I'm looking for when I'm asking questions and getting to know somebody?
Yeah, I think a couple things. Faithfulness. I think the Bible makes it clear that it's a massive value. Faithfulness and Paul and Timothy's relationship. You can see Paul edify that, but it's only the foundation. It's not everything. I think sometimes especially if we need a leader, we can say, "Well, where's the most faithful person?" That's not enough. I think it really is really incubated within faithfulness, and I would also add to that culture and heart, just that again, divine flow, but that passion for the mission that connects someone at a deeper level than just, I like, in my case, higher education. I might have a faculty member we're trying to hire. This person may have the degree, but they don't have the heart of the local church and the mission of the college that we're creating. So I think faithfulness and that culture, but I think competency. I'm just honestly a big fan. We actually use a lot of tools in our hiring, like predictive index, and we use strength finders and others, DISC, and we probably but I've never regretted that. Just to say, you know what, there's a responsibility of stewardship with someone, and with the position we're hiring, faculty or whatever it might be, I'm looking for the person who may not be the best yet, but has the right ingredients to become the best. And also, I don't want to hire the wrong person for a few reasons. One, I think that's bad stewardship of their gift, because they need to be where God has called them to be. And then for an organization as well, it creates a ton of, headache. It's time, it's energy. It's on average $150,000 to make a bad hire. And so I think that is a stewardship side of it that is very, very important. So I never hire close to me first. I think I'm always one that, if for my executive team at least, which I call the EOP, or Executive Office of the President, anyone that sits in that room would have come through a season of faithfulness and have grown in competency to a place that has already been demonstrated they're the right fit. But yep, I think the tools like predictive index is one, have really helped us to get more objective than subjective. I think it's easy maybe as Christians to say, hey, I love this person and I believe in this person, but let's also make sure this person has the right ingredients for them and for us.
Well, how many people are on the team now for Highlands College?
So we have 186 total teammates is how we address staff. And so that includes faculty, full-time and adjunct, as well as the operational and business side of the college, which is growing. I mean, we're in a season of massive growth from an enrollment standpoint, but really what you have to do before you can grow enrollment is create the resources for the students. So business units like housing. So we're in residential, which is a whole business unit, and an industry. We're in food, we're in security, we're in production, we're in all these different aspects. So building a team around each of those is actually, it's been a great learning curve for me, but it's more expensive on the front end, and you build efficiencies in with growth, but you have to set the stage before you can, you can't invite a student on campus and not have a bed for them or have food for them. Trust me, parents will let you know very quickly. So we're kind of in that, like right now we're on a pathway to 1,000 students. We would like to be there in the next 4 years. And so a lot of our team is really we're teaming up for that growth. And we're kind of in between our first season of growth and in a measured way on pace for that full enrollment.
So I think it's awesome to just think about what's happening at Highlands College, but I think a lot of people can go, well, how does that relate to my own leadership? One of the things that I heard you share about, honestly, it was at Highlands All Staff. You talked about focus and some of the things that you'd learned about focus and how to drill down and not get distracted in a distracted world. And I think that's very practical for anybody in leadership. And honestly, just anybody that doesn't even see themselves as a leader. How can I focus in a world with so many things going on? So I would love, again, just some of the things that have been very practical for you to learn how to manage your schedule to be able to focus and be as productive as possible.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with one of my board members about his own business and really about the workforce in America. And he mentioned to me, and that whole kind of pursuit of focus, which has been a big mantra for me this year, came from he had done some research just around how each unit or human element or each staff member in businesses, how they're producing X, and I forget the percentage exactly, but X% less productivity each year than they were even 5 years ago, and especially 10, 15, 20 years ago. And the culprit is distraction. And so if you divide work up, you really have different types of work. They're labeled differently, but in essence, you have relational work. So when you're at work, there's a relational component to what you're doing that's important, that you're connecting with each other, et cetera. For a lot of people, that's walking in the morning. It's the water cooler. It's the coffee. For us at the church, it's different in different moments. All staff you mentioned. That's an important aspect to never leave out. The primarily two work modes are shallow and deep work. And deep work is the work where you're at your best, doing your best, performing, your task at its ultimate efficiency and productivity. And that's where the numbers are really taking a hit. And how shallow work is the distracted work. That's some of it's just the typical email, text. I know anyone listening is like, man, I'm so tired of all that. Well, we're getting all that. And every time you get a single distraction, a notification, it takes up to 17 minutes to recover focus. And how over 80% sometimes of our workday is in that shallow work. So we're less fulfilled, we're accomplishing less, and we're going home with more anxiety because we feel like we didn't get the job done and it's weighing on us. And then guess what we do? We bring work home. And so, yeah, that really captured my heart, did a lot of study on it and brought it to our team, and it continues to stand by that teaching with my team and as a measure of accountability, because it really is, it's an imperative for us to be healthy people. We can't, for ministry, for life, for family, we can't be unhealthy people. And I think that distraction, getting the discipline to stay focused, I've encouraged my team. We have a no notification culture. Like when you're at work, we're putting those notifications away. Take a break, a specific notification break, at least, 10 minutes 15 minutes every hour. But in those 45 minutes, it's focus work. And what my team loves about that, and even at lunch in our food hall for our students, we don't even have screens. We don't allow screens, TV or phones when we eat. We have that culture so that we can relate, connect, recover, and then get back into that deep work, and then not take our work home, which is a great, it's a great reality. And so anyway, I don't know if you wanted all of that, but the bottom line is, I think if you're out there and you're looking for a way to create more productivity in your own life, but I think also bring more organizational health and mental health to your team, digging into focus is there's a lot there that I think we can all learn from.
No, I love anything you share on that, because I think it's something that we're all dealing with. Even for me, I have a box on my iPhone that has all my different communication tools, and it's really insane when you start looking at just the different ways people want to communicate with you. I mean, having 4 kids, everybody wants a different mode of communication. Every teacher has a different mode. They want you to follow their mode. Then you have, whatever organizations you're a part of, and it really can be exhausting to keep your focus when so many people want you to focus the way that they want you to, and everybody wants to text you, sign up. So I think it's huge. I think it's very important in leadership, and so love being able to speak to that. And I think everybody has to learn how to navigate it in this new season where there is so much information, but you can just drown in information and get nothing done.
Yeah, and there's some good hacks to it. I mean, I'm on my computer right now. My phone's here. I have a Garmin watch. No notifications on any of those, but I have those scheduled breaks each hour, and then I have, in my case, an assistant. But you could also use an alarm clock on your phone or whatever else that notifies me when my next event is happening. So I'm actually right now this is the freedom that I feel. I'm not thinking about how long you and I are going or what's next. I have a plan for that so that when I'm in a space, I can just be in that space. And I do that not just here at the office, but I've tried, and I don't always do well. And the temptation is there, but definitely bringing that home to the level of frustration, which I'm sure you've experienced with me, is I'm not always the best on my phone, but it's driven from a put it away, be where you are, present mindset. And I want to continually get better at that and always honor communication. But I think it's important for us to find the gray space in our own leadership in life. It's not everything, but it has, I think, a lot to do. I heard someone even the other day, a new illustration for this, so that every time you get a notification, it's like someone tapping on your shoulder. And just think if they're physically with somebody in your office all day doing this. Well, that's actually what's happening in our minds. Our minds are getting that tap constantly. And of course, that's going to create anxiety. Of course, that's going to create frustration. And then we're not getting our work done. So then we're disappointed. And it's just this self-perpetuating reality that we're going to be disciplined to get out of. But I think if we don't figure it out, then we're not going to be able to help our kids or next, generation after generation. So we
don't know how to practice the discipline of being still and being silent. And those are disciplines. Because
they are.
If you can't be alone by yourself and focus and just check out, your brain gets tired. I mean, you just can't stay in that state. Like you said, increases anxiety and so many other things in life when we are constantly engaged and being notified of something.
Yeah. And we can't hate technology. I mean, we can, but it doesn't help anything. So, I was kind of one of those guys, like, I hate AI, and I'm like, now I use AI every day. I'm like, I need discipline. I need to focus on it. I need to understand what it is and what it isn't. But at the same time, it's not going to go anywhere. So if
Right.
I live in the world of this reality, redeeming it becomes a very important part of that. So I think technology, it'll be never ending, but we got to continue just to learn how to steward it and be human, keep our humanness, and also leverage the tool that is technology.
Well, I have to throw in our question we ask every guest. You mentioned redeeming it. So we ask everybody because of who we are with the redeemed is what does redemption mean to you? And always tell people there's a great theology and an answer that we can give with, what it means, but I think it has a personal meaning for everybody. And so that's why we love to hear different
It's
reflections
awesome.
from every guest because redemption is personal. God redeems our life and redeems a lot of things. And so I love to hear what people have to say.
Yeah, I love that question, and I love what you're a part of, and the ministry you're a part of, and the work that you guys are doing. And I think redemption, yeah. So on a personal level, I think for me, when I think of redemption, I think of a car crash or a train wreck. I think of Ephesians chapter 1 and 2 or Colossians 2, 1 and 2 as well. You were dead in your sins. You were broken. I think of who I am without Jesus Christ, and that there was no hope, and that there was no way back. And I don't limit that. I try even every so often, not that often, but every so often. You don't want to camp here, but it's okay to visit every once in a while.
Yeah.
Who I used to be before
Yeah.
Jesus, and I think
Yeah.
about there was no hope. It wasn't like any part of me could have pulled me out of that
Yeah.
situation, and yet God, in His grace and His mercy, and the richness is what Ephesians says of those things, pulled us out of that and sent His Son Jesus to do that, and took what was impossible, that plane crash or that train wreck, and reformed it into a new creation and redeemed it and kept the good and crucified the bad. And so, yeah, I don't know. I've never been asked that question. It's a great question from just this. I preached it probably before, but I've
Yeah.
never been asked it. So I love that. But I think anybody who's listening who feels like right now you are that train wreck,
Yeah.
the answer to that is probably you are, because I know I was.
Yeah.
But the coolest truth is that God can save us right there, and that's exactly the perfect place to be, is when we realize that we have no hope.
Yeah. Oh, and the thing about it that's to me is a part that we often miss too is that it's a continual work. Like I screwed up so much later, and God continues to redeem
Oh,
those things
totally.
over and time again where we mess it up, and He changes it for His good and for His glory, no matter
Yeah.
what we do, time and time again.
Yeah, and thank God He does that. And that way
Yes.
we never can do it without Him.
Yes.
So we can never say, okay, I've got Jesus, what next?
Yeah.
And I think that's important for us to, if anybody's watching that's preaching or leading, I think the more right now, especially more than ever, I'm trying to do this when I communicate, just talk about Jesus a whole lot and make sure we don't ever professionalize or just what culture does to create a great turn the gospel message into just a great self-help message.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So good. Mark, you mentioned earlier a little bit about bringing work home and making sure you're checked out. You have four boys. They're all involved in sports. Your wife's involved in Highlands College. How do you manage and keep those priorities for home? Everybody's asking those questions. When we had Tebow for our restored event, everybody wanted to know how he managed his life and how he was able to manage his relationship with his wife and yet do all that he's doing speaking. And I know your calendar, I know the number of times that you're speaking on a Sunday service, the times that you're preparing to lead or speak at another event to represent Highlands College, and then just to be present with your boys, present with your wife. How do you do that? And what are some ways that you guard yourself to make sure it is a good practice and a healthy practice? I know Jill probably can inform you how healthy it is at any time, but I know
Yeah.
you have to have people around you too that are helping with that.
Yeah. So I would say, um, number one, and if you have this, you should thank God. And if you don't have it, pray and He will give it to you. But you need to have more than a love for your family. You need to have more, as a leader, you need to have more than a passion for your family. You need to have a conviction.
Yeah.
I think you have to if you have a list, it's Jesus and then your wife and your family, and not just in a cliche way, but you have to let that burn into your soul, because it's going to cost you something. Now the other side of that is I believe God blesses it, and it's a multiplier to our influence and our
Yeah.
peace and our ability to lead. I think it takes the hour the hour you lose, and maybe you needed 3 hours, you only have two, because you're going to dedicate this to to your family and you're going to leave the office and get to that game. I think God supernaturally takes the 2 hours and turns them into 4. So I think there's just a thing that only God can do, but you don't see that in real time. So I think for me, it starts with a continual prayer, but definitely a conviction I received in a lot of ways from my dad, from his values, which were driven from the fact he didn't have a dad. So my dad reacted to the loss of his dad at a young age from a heart attack to a passion for us that was expressed physically, verbally, and overly expressed through just his attention to not just being in a space, but his attention to me in those spaces growing up. My dad was very present. So I inherited that, but then there's been every reason in the world to lose that. So I've had to continually pray for that conviction. And so for me, my day starts with some values. I'm going to cook. This is just me, and I would never push this, but this comes from conviction and from me praying through it. But I'm going to cook my kids breakfast, and I'm going to spend time with them before they go to school. I'm actually going to drive them to school. Not that my wife can't do those things. And there are times when I'm out of town. Obviously, there's the exception, but I have a conviction that that's something that's important for me before I push play on my day. So then what does that mean? Well, then you back your morning up. So if I'm going to spend time with the Lord, or I'm going to work out, or if I'm going to do whatever. This morning I woke up at 4:45, got all those things in, and was there. And so that to me is a huge value. And then I'm going to see my kids every afternoon. So I actually will leave after this podcast in the afternoon. I'm going to invest time into my boys. Tonight we have a football game. I'll do that. Never miss any kind of sporting event. But there's many nights, as you know, the church has an event. And so I'll go home, spend a few hours, and come back. And that may cost me in the margins, but I'm going to be the one that pays the price, not my boys. Yeah. And that's just where my conviction is, because I don't have long. We don't, as parents. Yeah. We have 18 years with them, and I recognize from being a youth pastor how quickly that can go by, and so it just stirs. I think it's something, again, we have to pray for and stir. But to me, I think what I've learned from great parents is it's not that complicated. It's fighting for communication, and if you ever are losing communication, dig in. There's one of my boys right now. We're digging in because we sense him pulling away a little bit. He's in high school now. He's growing up. There's some natural things that are happening. That's a huge lean in. I think going back to what we talked about at the beginning, shared experience. One of the things I learned from a family I deeply respect is they were like, we were not like the family that had, a mission statement on the wall or had 7. And we're not that family. We're just. But he said what we did is we had traditions every year that were anchored into a vacation. A place that a restaurant that we all love, not even complicated or expensive things, just a few things that make our family our family. Yeah. And so Jill and I are always trying to do that. And then thirdly, and I think possibly even most important, is all that is coupled with a love for the local church. So, having your family and your kids in church, in small group, even when it hurts. Like last night at midweek, I took my kids to church. We were out till whenever, driving kids around. So I think those are very important pieces: communication, shared values, or shared experience, traditions, and then local church. So we're trying to do that, not knowing if we pass any kind of parent test, but I do know this: I'm not going to have a regret I did what I could in the moment I could. I'm sure there'll be things I wish I would have known that I don't, but it won't be a regret of what I did with what I had.
Those are good. It's often very practical. It's just a matter of do you put it and make it happen. And like you said, you got to have a conviction.
And it's not convenient.
You got to have a conviction to do that. Because
let's be honest, there's days we don't like our kids very much. That's okay. It's like, sometimes it's a discipline because we're frustrated with them. We're like, this morning they would not get out of bed. And I'm like,
well, you got what, your oldest 15, right? Or 14?
So we're 15, 13.
That's
so
what I thought. So
both in different parts of puberty, and coming out, my 15-year-old 6'3", and just knows everything all of a sudden. It's amazing how that happens. They just literally they got every answer to every question. And then we have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. So elementary, 2 in middle, 1 in high school. So we're at 3 different schools in the morning, 4 different football teams. It's a lot of fun.
And mine feels like we're all teenagers because I have 17, 15, and 12. And there's moments where you're like, I don't remember student ministry being this hard.
Yeah.
It's so different when it's your own kid.
Because it wasn't that personal. It's the same problems we dealt with, but it wasn't personal in the personal side. And you got to live with those kids. You're not sending them home. It's like youth pastor is kind of like a grandparent. We'll see you later. I'll just get to you when you're in church or whatever. But yeah, at the same time, the grace for it, we did decide early on to laugh even in the hard moments. And for the most part, we've done that. But I think the thing that I think great parents, and I've asked literally hundreds, and I think I've had the benefit of that, just being a student of great parents and admiring, seeing families I admire and leaning into that. And it all comes back to, there's different words for it, but it all comes back to just the conviction that we don't have a lot of time. And so there'll be a day where they're gone, and not to look forward to that. I mean, I kind of in some ways do look forward to that, but not to say there's an escape coming, but to say, no, this is my greatest investment I will ever make. And there will be a day it's too late. And I think that's huge. And for practical tips, just as a hack or whatever, I think Andy Stanley has some of the best parenting framework, around different seasons and all that. You can obviously find all that online.
His book, Parenting, is to me one of the best on parenting.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what about you and Jill? What are some non-negotiables for you guys, or some practices that you have to keep the fire burning with marriage and to just stay on the same page?
Yeah, so we're both we both don't, which is funny because of, well, kind of in some ways the way our job could lay out. We fight against the temptation to let it, but we both need spontaneous, adventure, excitement. Like, we love people. We love, we're adults and we got to figure this out. We love late nights with good friends, and we love jumping in the car and let's go on a road trip. And we, love traveling around the country in an RV. We love that spontaneous, and it's not always easy to build that in, or even smart or wise to build that in, but just so then therefore finding we connect really great outside. So we're taking walks regularly. We have a schedule walk every Sunday that we do. That's where we talk about schedule and the week coming up, but then throughout the week, grabbing those opportunities that weren't even on the paper, which is kind of the spontaneous piece, and saying, let's go hang out. We love date night with a new restaurant that we've never tried, and we love trying it for the first time together. So I think a lot of the typical things you would see in the weeds. I think at the core of it, Jill and I are best friends, and there's no one I'd rather spend my off day with. So just finding that space, and sometimes it's not a lot right now, but finding that space and just being very present with each other. What's important for her are the details. So making sure inside of that we are communicating, and that we're not caught off guard. But in general, we love to travel a lot. We would spend every penny we had traveling the world just because we love it so much. And so we work seasonally. I think this would be one thing maybe that could help anyone, is that we generally pick, and this is something intentionally we do, we pick a date that we plan something we're looking forward to. And she and I are going on a trip here in 28 days. I mean, I don't even know how long it is, and then in between this and that, usually it's a busy season, whatever, different events, conferences, whatever. But we kind of have this thing at the end of that where we are looking towards and looking forward together. And that's something that's really helped create for us the endurance to get through some push seasons, knowing that there's always something built in. And the times I've messed up is when we didn't build that in, and it felt like you were just in one continual season. I think you need start and end moments if your job is atypical. Like, I don't ever have a typical work week. So if you're not careful, you can get lost in that.
Yeah, no doubt. It always gives you something to look forward to.
Yep.
And to rally towards. I mean, it's that competitive. We're going to get there. We're going to do it. We're going to do it well. But I know I've got a finish line.
Yeah. I'm going duck hunting tomorrow with my boys. I'm like, I can't wait. We've been talking about it, we've been talking about it for 3 weeks. So those things are important.
Well, I know at your level of leadership, there's been a lot you've had to give up. What would you say to maybe a young leader? Because I think that's one of the things we don't often talk about. I mean, there's so many rewards in leadership, but there's a lot of things you give up. The higher you go up, the more pain sometimes there is because of the position that you carry, the things that are said in public. What have you learned, and what have you given up that has really stretched you a lot over the last several years with ministry and leading a college? Because there are huge demands.
Yeah, I mean, I don't generally think of it in that context, but I definitely understand the question. I think for me, giving up the right to be right as a leader, I think being effective is always your goal, not being right. So, yielding to a team, yielding to a vision, yielding. In my case, I serve underneath a leader, and so I get told no, and I think that's a healthy thing. And I don't think you always like that in the moment. But I think a lot of young leaders, myself included, like you want it all, you want it now, and you kind of want it your way without even ever having said that. That's actually what the picture of the future might look like. And so I think I tell a lot of young leaders, if you really want to have influence, it's going to compound like interest. You're not going to see it in your bank account day one. It's going to feel like you made a foolish investment because you put it in there and it's just not growing. But the power and the magic is 10, 15, 20 years later, now it's compounding. And so now you see this almost sometimes feeling out of nowhere, this compounding effect. I think that happens seasonally in our life as leaders. The problem is a lot of young leaders right now are looking for the microwave, not the crock pot. And so because of that, they actually never stay anywhere long enough to experience that. And so I think I've given up the right to go other places. I've given up the right to take a shortcut. I've given up the right to always be right. And inside of that, because I'm where God has called me, and I think that's very important. You don't want to stay somewhere you're not called. So I think peace is a great indicator for that. But because of that, I think I've been around long enough. I don't think I'm that good for sure. And I don't think even Pastor Chris would say this, we're that good. We just didn't quit. We stayed around long enough for that compounding interest to catch up and for team and resources to hit the stride that as Ephesians 3:20, it's exceedingly abundantly more. But so now we're stewarding something that kind of snuck up on us in a lot of ways. It wasn't always like this, and doesn't necessarily got to work hard because it's not guaranteed to always be like this. But I think that's something that's really, really important for young leaders to stick in, find a place you're called, stick in, let your own experience, your own knowledge, your own wisdom, your own influence, not your title, but your actual authority grow through influence and be around long enough to see the fruit of it.
Great. Working with college age students, what do you see as the most exciting thing about this generation? Because there's a lot of talk about the negatives, not always a lot of talk about the positives, but I know you see a lot of the positives, and I'd love to hear from your perspective, kind of what are you identifying that you're like, and this is something that is so much capacity and capability and opportunity for the future.
Yeah, don't mess with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, man. I will fight you. In fact, the guy the other day called him Gen Zero, and I was like, I'm going to punch you, sir. You need to back away, because I do love this generation. And I think every generation is frustrating for the generation that's older than them. So I don't like remember a lot about the show Scooby-Doo, but I do remember this. At the end of every episode, they would always catch the monster, and they'd pull the mask off, and every single episode, the person would say, I would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for those darn kids. And they would like shake their finger at them. I think there's a lot of generational, like, those darn kids, and I think the moment we give into that, by the way, that's actually when you get old. I don't think being old is not an age, it's an attitude. And so I think embracing the mess is, you have to ask the Holy Spirit at times because it is messy, but it starts all kind of with a sensitivity to that I think anyone can have, and ask God to give us eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to have empathy for this young generation. Inside of that, once you have that context, you start seeing the positive, and I think there's a lot of it. Yeah. I think their lack of borders, and I don't mean that in a political or geographical sense, but in a digital sense, is truly unique and remarkable. I think we lived in a analog linear reality where they live in a 360 global reality. So I think they're thinking about the world as a very small place with really big potential. And so I think that's inspiring, that the way they imagine the world and their connectivity to it. I think there's a lot of entrepreneurship inside of them that is going to be a game changer. I think the best ideas the world's ever seen are in this generation. And I see a spirit. I don't see in some of those ideas yet. They're young, but I mean, my kids, probably same with your kids, they got side hustles on side hustles. They're starting businesses. They're selling lemonade. They're starting, different 3D printing. One of my boys has a 3D printing company. He prints stuff. He created a magazine. He sells it at school, and those are all immature, and they're not even necessarily the fruit of what we'll see. But there's a spirit there that we weren't doing that at their age. No. I mean, I wasn't thinking that way at their age. I had no construct for that. So I think that's huge. I think their connectivity digitally has interesting with Gen Z, and a lot of stats back this up, that millennials kind of pioneered that space, and especially the social media space, where Gen Z is definitely attracted to it, but they also are attracted and recognize the need for human connection. And I think there's a lot of community opportunity. In fact, any local church leader, if you're not fighting harder for physical in-person community right now, then you're kind of getting left behind, because that is the future. Digital space has a footprint for sure, and that is expanding in different ways, but their desire to be connected together is massive. And when you create culture around that, you will see the fruit of that. And that's something we fight for every day at Highlands College, is that we're a college. We are determined to be America's Ministry Leadership University. that feels like a local church when you're inside of it. Elite, world class, excellent, but connected and communal, not kind of this siloed off, cold classroom environment that a lot of places I at least went and experienced. So anyway, I'll stop right there. But I think there's a lot. I could talk for the next hour about how much I love about Gen Z and the rising Gen Alpha.
Well, tell us about what Highlands College is doing and what's ahead, because I think that plays into your passion for the next generation. And I know there's some people listening that are just unfamiliar with Highlands College. And what are you guys doing? What kind of degrees are you offering? What's ahead for the vision?
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, we'd love to talk about it. So, birthed in 2011, we are a ministry leadership university birthed out of a local church. We are built like one of the best way to describe it is like one of the military academies. As Liz, you mentioned earlier, went to West Point. What's unique about West Point is it takes more than a classroom to train a military officer. And the same is true for a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It takes more than a classroom.
So true.
So we've built all of our programming around four things that really makes us distinctive in the Christian space. We've built it around academics, and we have 7 degrees now, bachelor degrees now that we're offering. 3 different schools. We have 7 degrees. Things such as youth ministry, worship, pastoral leadership, global ministries. And that's just the beginning. In fact, I just got finished working earlier today on a business minor, which is the first step towards what will be a business major, which will be built out of a business as missions mindset.
Yeah.
Recognizing that business will be a vehicle God uses as a missional effort in the future, already is and will continue to be. And I hope any business leader out there recognizes you're as much a minister as Nathan and I are. So we're really excited about the academics. Then we have what probably is the truest distinction as our ministry training pillar. We build 800 hours of real world experience into all of our graduates. They graduate having done the job that they're being prepared for. And we do that through our local church here at Highlands, give them the experience in youth ministry, in worship. Once we hit in the business space, we have a lot of local businesses that are excited to open their doors and mentor our students while they're also learning in the classroom. And then the other 2 pillars are the spiritual and character side, which we always think of it, it's the head knowledge that you need. In academics, it's the hand knowledge you need from the ministry training, and then it's the heart knowledge of in love with Jesus. And we have a deep spiritual curriculum around chapels and small groups. And then we hired an Air Force general to actually lead our character pillar. And so our students were trained how to be the man or woman of God that they've been called to be, and to be able to finish the race they start. So it's exciting. We're graduating this year. We'll graduate almost 200 students. We've already seen 1,000 of our graduates be sent into and are currently serving in full-time ministry, and we're just getting started. So residential campus, have a brand new dorm, brand new facility.
Which is phenomenal, by the way.
Yeah, and if you want to see it, of course, it's highlandscollege.edu. You can check it out, and there's a way there even to connect with us as a team. And if you or maybe you have a student would want to come visit, we'd love to host you. You'll get good Southern hospitality.
Yes, no doubt about it. Mark, thank you for sharing that about Highlands College and just sharing so much about leadership. You and I could talk for hours, but I just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing insights, and just thank you for your friendship and your faithfulness. Thank you for how you've been faithful in sharing the gospel, and love that I get to hear and sit and take in your teaching from time to time at church. Is so much fun, and just could not be more proud of you. Continue to be faithful, and excited to see what God has in store for us.
Well, love you a ton. It's an honor to be on here with you today, and love that we are connected in this season of life, and just grateful for who you are and what you've meant to me my entire life.
Thanks, Mark. Love you, man. Thanks, guys, for joining us for this episode of the Redeemed Man podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating or review. It's always helpful in us getting the word out about our podcast. Thanks, and God bless.